Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. As you can probably already tell, today we're gonna test the brand new 7 Series. And since over here in Europe the first models to be launched are fully electric, today we are technically testing the BMW i7 xDrive60. And boy do I have a lot of things to tell you about it. Now let's get started. Here it is, completely set and fully equipped with this controversial front-end design included. Now, before we dig into its design and its features, let's talk about the BMW 7 Series history for a bit. This is basically the 7th generation 7 Series, and its code name is G70. A lot of 7s, and this is the i7 as well. So it has a very long history, and over time the 7 Series was used as a technological flagship by BMW, and not a lot has changed over the years. As you're gonna see, this car has a lot of technology too. Now, on the design front, rarely have we seen such a controversial front end. I think the last time we were so outraged by the design of this car was back in the Chris Bangle era, the E65, E66 models. Well, to be honest, I have asked a lot of people what they thought of this design. And while in photos and maybe in video as well, the car does seem a bit off. In person, it is incredibly imposing. And everyone told me that they actually like this design. So if you don't like it, maybe you should just check it out in person. I'm not exactly a huge fan of it, but I don't hate it either. And I think it's starting to grow on me. I'm sure that the most controversial bit is right here. The fact that we have split headlights. So basically the up top portion is the daytime running light bit. It uses Swarovski crystals and it glows at night. Looks quite interesting. And on the lower half over here, this is basically the headlight with the low beam and the high beam. Well, I don't know. It's quite interesting. The grille is definitely huge, but we've gotten used to that since the 7 Series, the previous generation's facelift. And you can actually get an optional feature that lights up the surrounds of the front grille. This car doesn't have that feature. What it does have is this matte frozen, BMW calls it frozen gray finish. It looks pretty nice, and I think it blocks out the ugliness in the front end. The moment you see this car and you hop inside, you notice just how big it is. Now the 7 Series is only offered in long wheelbase versions, so the short wheelbase is no longer available. So this car has a total length of almost 5.4 meters. And not only that, but it's incredibly tall. So you have very big surfaces all over the sides, and it is 2.2 meters wide. So yeah, quite big. From the sides, what you'll notice is these are 20-inch wheels, and yet they seem small compared to the size of this car. You'll also notice there are 6 ultrasonic sensors, 2 on the door handles. Each door handle has one. There are 4 of them on the door sill. And that's because this car has a very interesting feature. You can basically open the doors using the key. And of course, you can also close them. Yeah. BMW says there are about 5 ways to open these doors. So you can use the remote control, and you can actually set up this button over here to open 1 door, 2 doors, 3 doors, or all 4 doors. I configured it to open all 4 for a bigger impact in this video. You can also use the buttons on the doors like this. The door will open. It uses this sensor to know if there's an obstacle close. As you saw, the car actually stopped opening the door once I got close. Let's close it. You can also use the traditional method. And actually, as you pull the door, you have electrical assistance to open it. And the same goes when you try to close it. You just have to push it just a little and it closes. Quite amazing. And then there's also the option of pressing a button inside the car to open the door. So you have a button over here on the dashboard. You can press it to open and close the door. For the driver's side, you can also press on the brake pedal, and it will close the door automatically. You can also use the infotainment system to open the door, and you can also use the app. So plenty of ways to open and close the doors on this car. Moving to the back, you'll also notice how big this car is, because while the rear end is more elegant in a traditional sense from BMW, when you sit in the back, you notice just how high it goes and how massive it is. Plenty of huge areas, flat areas around here. And of course, you can open the boot electrically as well. And you have 500 liters of space available in here. Nothing to write home about. But, of course, you will be interested in the most important seat in the house, and that is the rear passenger seat. Because this is where the big boss will sit, most likely. This is where you will sit when you're being chauffeured around in the brand new 7 Series. So let's hop in and talk about the novelties on this car. First of all, let's close the door. First of all, you will notice these screens embedded in the door handles. Now, these allow you to control every function in the car, and they are replacing the old tablet that used to sit right here on the center console, on the center armrest. The armrest now only has a wireless charging port and 2 cup holders if you want them, but everything is done using this controller over here. Basically, you can adjust everything inside the car, from the displays to the media center, telephone, driving mode, seats, blinds, lights, and so on. So, this car is fitted with the lounge seating option. These are the lounge seats, by the way. Look absolutely great. Wrapped in leather on the backs and on the fronts. We have textured wood over here on the headrests, and they look fantastic. But that's not all. If I press a button, the car will automatically set the lounge position, which, like on the previous 7 Series, means the front passenger seat will fold in order to make more room for the rear passenger seat. That's not new. What is new, though, is the fact that, as you're about to see, we have this support over here that basically raises your legs to have a more comfortable position for traveling for extended periods of time. And the seat actually moves with you and is absolutely next level comfort in the back of this car. That's not all, though. As you probably know already, this car also comes with a theater mode. Basically, you have a cinema on board. This is a 31-inch screen. It has an 8K resolution. It has internet, and you can connect it to a number of streaming services. As you can see, they are already installed. So you can watch your favorite shows while in the back of this car. And the sound system from Bowers & Wilkins, which is optional, about 4,000 euros, is absolutely brilliant. And you can watch movies while you're being chauffeured to your next meeting. Quite awesome, isn't it? Yes. Let's hop in the front and talk about what you'll find over there. Of course, we're going to use the self-opening doors. Oh, an interesting feature about these is that if the car detects an object close, it won't let you hit it. It has a certain force field that doesn't let you open the door too much. Quite interesting. The materials used are of the best quality. The fit and finish is impeccable. We have Swarovski crystals for these buttons that control the seats. We have crystals on the door over here housing buttons, touch sensitive buttons, aluminum, leather, and of course the novelty for the new 7 Series is this textile finish for the seats. This is the most expensive option when it comes to the interior design. This is cashmere used for the bottom half of the seat, and you have leather on the top half. Other options include full leather, full natural leather, and the entry choice, the base one, is vegan leather. And this is basically the first premium luxury car with a vegan leather interior. This is the steering wheel, looks nice, flat at the bottom, kind of thick for a lot of people. I actually like it, but I've heard people say it's too thick. And of course we have this new interior design. Now, this is a huge screen, curved screen. Well, to be honest, there are two screens, one for the instrument cluster, one for the multimedia system. They work flawlessly, great quality, resolution and animations. You can adjust these tiles in any order you want, and you have a lot of features over here and settings and so on. You can adjust everything. I'm not going to go through all of them. I did that on the BMW iX review, so you can check that out if you want to. But I do love this crystal over here that changes color with the driving modes. So you have a button over here for your driving modes. You can press on it and you can choose whichever you prefer. We're now in theater mode because we have the screen down, but you can choose digital art and the car will adjust itself accordingly. Now we have purple crystals all around and a different background for the instrument cluster. You can also go for my favorite, which is expressive mode, that adds these colors to the crystals and they are pulsating. It looks a lot better at night. And of course we have a different theme for the instrument cluster as well, with yellow and blue and turquoise. Looks pretty great and I actually like it. And for the instrument cluster you can also configure the way it shows information, and the novelty is the fact that you have now augmented view, which is this setup that uses a camera embedded in the back of the rear view mirror to show you the road ahead. Now this is useful when you're driving at night and you have the driver assistance systems set on, because it shows in green highlights the road you're on, the cars in front of you and so on, but it also shows you the direction you need to travel in. If you're using the navigation system, it adds some arrows on the screen that actually tell you where to go. So there's a lot happening on the new 7 Series. This is just like a taste of what you can do inside it. It's quite a brilliant setup, but now it's time to drive it and I'm going to show you a lot more details about it once we're on the road. Before we set off, let's talk about a couple of new features on the new BMW 7 Series. We're talking about features that are supposed to help you out a lot. So you probably already know that the previous generation model had a system that allowed you to reverse up to 50 meters completely autonomously. So the car would remember the last 50 meters you covered and would back up on the same, tracks if you wanted it to. Well, for the new 7 Series, we have new features on board. We still have that reversing parking assistant, which now has a range of up to 200 meters because it now uses the cameras on board as well. But you also have the maneuver assistant. The maneuver assistant will actually drive the car forward on a pre-recorded path. So what I did was I recorded the path over here in this yard, and I'm going to let the car drive itself. So all I have to do is press on this button here that says start recorded path 3, and all I have to do is press the brake pedal to activate it. And now the car will drive on the pre-set up route I recorded earlier. So I'm not doing anything. The car just drives itself on the path that I recorded. Now this could prove useful, for example, if you have a, busy yard, busy property on your branch, and you have to drive the car around, flowers or certain areas, and you don't want to do it every single time you get home. It's pretty narrow, so you want to let the car take control of that. We arrived at the end of the destination. You can also do this by using the My BMW app. All you have to do is activate the system from the app, and the car will drive itself on the pre-established path. The best part about it is that it can also avoid objects. So the car knows that it shouldn't really encounter any obstacles on its route. But if it does, and it doesn't have to deviate too much from the pre-recorded path, it will avoid obstacles. I think the deviation could be around 30 to 40 centimeters, which is pretty awesome. Of course, the car can also park itself in a number of ways, and now it uses augmented reality to do that, and the cameras to look for parking spaces. And it can do that. Look, for example, it found a parking space. So I can tell it to start reverse parking. And you can see it's going to try to fit the car in between these other two parked cars. Let's see how well it does. Woo. Man, I'm scared. It's going kind of fast. Okay, that's enough. Yeah. I think it did a pretty good job, considering it has no painted lines on the road to show it how to park and so on. So you can actually ask it to leave the parking space. I just have to press this button here. I have to press the brake pedal, and the car will leave the parking space on its own. Let's see. Really close. Well, it didn't exactly take me out of the parking space, but it did position me in such a way that I can now leave without any issues. So yeah, these are small steps taken by the BMW company towards completely autonomous driving. The car also has a lot of new tech that can help it out on the highway, to keep it in lane, to help out the driver on longer trips. The new driving assistants can also change lanes for you, and they use cameras and a number of new sensors on board to make sure you're kept safe. And they actually work pretty well. Also, you can see in the instrument cluster, as I said, the augmented reality setup, which basically helps you out whenever you're in a tricky situation or on the highway and you want the car to drive itself. So it works pretty great. I'm using it right now. It's braking because the cars in front of me are also braking. So pretty impressive tech, but that's not all. This car is an i7, as I already said. It's an xDrive60 model. So that means it has two electric motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle, good for 544 horsepower and 745 Newton meters of torque. It uses two synchronous motors without rare earths. This is the BMW Gen 5 drivetrain, and what it does is it uses the best of both worlds. So if it's basically a synchronous motor without a permanent magnet in the rotor. Basically, that allows it to coast whenever it needs to, which cannot be done on synchronous electric motors. And that should make the car a bit more efficient. Considering we have a 102 kilowatt hour battery in the floor, that's the usable capacity, by the way, this car should cover up to 600 kilometers according to BMW's estimates. Well, I did my usual real-life range test with this car. You can find the link over here if you didn't see it last week. And I got, well, interesting results. Around town, I saw an average range of about 430 kilometers. On the highway, that went down to 400 kilometers, driving at 130 kilometers an hour. And on a series of B-roads, winding B-roads, like the ones we're on right now, the range went up to about 530 kilometers, which is pretty awesome, pretty damn close to the claimed specs. However, we did have perfect weather, and that definitely helped out. The car is riding on winter tires, but I don't think that has a huge impact, considering this is a 2.7-ton car anyway. So I don't think that's going to be a huge improvement if you change your tires. But overall, I think these are pretty good results. I didn't expect them to be this good on a car this heavy. And the BMW i7 is incredibly heavy, 2.7 tons, because it uses a modified internal combustion engine platform at its basis. So it doesn't have a dedicated electric platform that it could ride on. If that's going to be a big no-no for customers later on, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see the sales figures before we make up our mind about that. But if you're driving this car, you won't really care about it. I mean, the advantage that a dedicated platform would bring is definitely related to the weight of the car, but when you drive the i7, you don't really feel that weight. Even though it's incredibly heavy, it hides its weight perfectly because of its adaptive suspension, air suspension, active anti-roll bars, and of course integral steering. This car has integral steering, and when you turn, it makes it feel a lot shorter than it actually is. The suspension makes it feel a lot lighter, and the fact that you have instant torque also makes it feel a lot lighter on its feet, because it goes incredibly fast whenever you press on the accelerator pedal, just a tiny bit more than you're supposed to. As a matter of fact, despite its weight, this car is quite fast off the line. It will do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 4.7 seconds and go up to 240 kilometers an hour. And when you're activating launch control, the car does a very, very nifty trick. It vibrates the rear axle so that it offers a sort of feedback to the driver to get him ready for what's coming. And it's quite a nice party trick. People seem to be impressed by it. But that's not all. The car also has audible feedback. So if you go into sport mode, you'll hear a sound. This is supposed to emphasize just how fast the car is going. And that's not all. You also have the expressive mode, which also comes with a dedicated soundtrack. This one's different, and both of them have been created by none other than Hans Zimmer, the mastermind behind many of Hollywood's blockbuster movies. In terms of soundtrack, he signed off on the Inception soundtrack, the Interstellar soundtrack, and I think the sound in this car reminds me of Interstellar every time I press on the gas pedal. The go faster pedal. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, especially at low speeds. But what about the driving experience? Well, as I said, the car hides its weight very well. So when you want to drive it in a sportier manner, even though the 7 Series isn't exactly a sports car, you can definitely do so. It's quite enjoyable to throw around in a bend, but you have to be prepared for the weight of the car. Even though it hides it pretty well, you can still hear the tires protesting every time you go over a certain threshold. So you need to be careful about that. I never felt any kind of understeer with this car. I did feel a lot of oversteer, so it's quite nice. It drives like a BMW, if you will. Yeah, so the voice activated assistant just turned on because I said BMW. I hope that doesn't happen later on. That's because the new personal assistant can react to the usual voice command, "Hey BMW," as you can say, as you can hear right now. Cancel.
Cheers.
And it knows who is giving it its command. So, for example, if I activate the personal assistant and I tell it to open my window, it will know that it was the driver who said that, and it will open the driver's window. If the passenger will tell it to turn up its heat or to turn on its heated seats, it will do so for the passenger, the front passenger. So it knows whoever is giving it its a command. That's pretty awesome. You don't have to specify to whom the command applies. So getting back to the way this car drives, first of all, you're sitting incredibly high. This is a big car, we have the battery in the floor, and you're sitting really, really high. And that means you will feel like you're driving a crossover more than a sporty limousine, for example, as some people would call the 7 Series. Then there's the comfort. The car is incredibly comfortable. One of the most refined rides I have experienced. It will soak up bumps with incredible grace, and it will do so without hesitation every time. There hasn't been a situation where I saw this car struggling to soak up bumps. It is incredibly and ultimately refined in every way you can think of, quiet, and yeah, it's a 7 Series. So the 7 Series has been known to be incredibly comfortable. I cannot really say if it's more comfortable than the EQS. The EQS from Mercedes-Benz does seem to have the upper hand in terms of comfort, and I can definitely tell you that it is a bit more quiet inside the EQS, which is this car's main rival, because the EQS has a terribly more aerodynamic shape, and especially at higher speeds that starts to come out. The EQS is a lot more quiet, but after all, you already saw the exterior design of this car. It's a bit boxy, so it's natural to have a bit more road noise inside the cabin whenever you go a bit faster. But that doesn't mean it's a noisy cabin. It's actually very refined. It's just that the EQS does it a bit better, and that's just God's honest truth. At the same time, the i7 offers a lot more space inside, and I think the build quality inside the BMW is superior to the one in the Mercedes-Benz. But then again, we're not trying to split hairs over here. We were talking about the ride of this car, which is brilliant, and I'll give it a 10 out of 10. It's pretty close to the one you will find in a Rolls-Royce. As a matter of fact, a lot of people have compared this car to a Rolls-Royce Ghost, and I have to agree, it does come pretty darn close. So we talked about the range you can expect. We talked about the way this car drives. What else is there? Well, as a conclusion, this car definitely impressed me. At first, I really didn't want to like it because I'm not a big fan of its front-end design. Not the whole design of the car, but the front-end design. But after a few days with this car, I realized that I don't really care about the front-end design. I care about the interior. The interior is absolutely brilliant in terms of build quality and refinement. I also like the design. I like this crystal setup over here. The lights inside, they're not too much and not too shy either. So I love the sound design of this car, signed off by Hans Zimmer, and I like a lot of things about this car. Would I buy it instead of an EQS? Yes, I would. I would prefer this car instead of the EQS because mainly it has a better interior. Would I buy it, period, in this segment? Well, right now the i7 is not challenged by any traditional car. So the EQS is basically its main rival, and I already said that I would pick this car instead of it. Another rival could be the Lucid Air, but I mean, that's a very niche car. Very few people will actually get to drive it. I didn't get to drive it. Very few people will actually get to buy it and experience it. So I don't think it's a proper rival for this car. And if you're thinking of comparing it to a Tesla Model S, you better get your head checked, because there is just simply no comparison between these two cars. This is a premium, luxury, whatever you want to call it, car, while the Tesla is way, way behind. Sure, maybe it's fast. Maybe it will stick your head against the headrest whenever you go in plaid mode, in extreme mode, whatever they want to call it. But refinement and luxury is not about speed. Refinement and luxury is about what you can find in the i7. So the Tesla simply doesn't come even close. That said, I would like to know your guys' opinion about this car. Would you buy it? Would you prefer it over the EQS? Which one you would get? And what are your thoughts about it? Before we go, I have to say this car has a price tag of 193,000 euros. It's one of the most expensive 7 Series I've ever experienced, but it is not the most expensive. I had the pleasure of driving a 200,000 euro V12 powered 7 Series on the previous generation. So Some might say this 7 Series got too expensive, but that's not true. The previous generation could go even higher in terms of price range. Sure, this car is a fully optioned car. The only thing that's missing is the bitonal paint finish on the exterior. That's 12,000 euros, and yes, that would push it over the 200,000 psychological marker, if you will, threshold. But I don't really think you actually need a bicolor finish on the exterior of this car. I think this matte finish is exactly what you need, and I think it works well with the shapes of the car. Okay, so that's it. Please let me know what you think about the car in the comment section below. If you enjoyed my review and you found it useful, please drop a like and a comment and maybe a share to keep this channel alive. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.